Hello and most welcome to 1871. I will continue with Paul Johnston's Rethinking the Inner. And I am myself a little bit under the weather. I hope it will not impart on the presentation. We've been discussing the musicality of language. And we were talking also about gestures and bodily movements, reactions, tremblings, micro movements, whatever they can be, things of the eye, the hair, even microscopic changes in the atmosphere. There's much more than meets the eye. Now continue on page 108. It's the third paragraph, right down on the page. It is not just a question of recognizing a pre-arranged signal. On the contrary, what underlines the language of gestures is kingship, not agreement. Understanding involves a direct response to the gesture itself, and is the directness of this response which makes communication possible. To take the related example of a facial expression such as a smile. To us, a smile may signify many things, and in a particular situation, its precise meaning may be very important. However, we would not necessarily be able to teach the language of smiles to emotion. A human smile may convey nothing to her, or at best she may be able to learn to see a smile as some sort of sign of pleasure, without being able to distinguish further as to its precise meaning. As this example shows, there can be communication without rules, and this communication is not just a vague second best. However, we would not necessarily be able to teach the language of smiles to emotion. A human smile may convey nothing to her, or at best she may be able to learn to see a smile as some sort of sign of pleasure, without being able to distinguish further as to its precise meaning. And that's very important. So we can never teach emotion. It's similar to the Ozma problem of Gardner. As this example shows, this communication is not just a vague second best. On the contrary, it can, in a sense, be even more specific than language, so that if we try to translate one into the other, it is the language of words that comes to seem clumsy and inadequate. Here it may seem somewhat suspect that the supposed communication cannot be put into words. But the whole point of this sort of communication is that it works on a different level to rule-based languages. The reason there are no rules in this context is because the medium and the message are indistinguishable. The person who smiles is not simply using a recognized signal designed for use in a wide variety of contexts. Rather, her smile is a gesture, and what it says may be unique and only possible in the particular context in which it occurred. What is needed to understand a smile is not a set of rules, but an understanding of people and possibly some knowledge of the individual concerned. The latter one I definitely agree on. It's incredibly important. However, the fact that the gesture may have a unique, untranslatable meaning does not imply it cannot be explained at all. For example, we might characterize a smile as being a mixture of love and pity, or as expressing hope and an awareness of the absurdity of our situation, of the situation. These descriptions may roughly express what the smile meant, but only very crudely. Perhaps the only way really to understand the smile would have been to see it, and even then its meaning might only be apparent to someone who knew the person concerned that really well. As the above example suggests, we do not interpret gestures by reference to pre-established canons of right and wrong, and this may seem to suggest that the whole process is entirely subjective. As the above example suggests, we do not interpret gestures by reference to pre-established canons of right or wrong, and this may seem to suggest that the whole process is entirely subjective. Important sentence here. It couldn't be more wrong than to assume that. In that case, however, What justification is there for talking of understanding? Well, we certainly do talk of understanding another person's smile, and that understanding may be confirmed by our ability to predict and interpret her actions. How very true, that is important. Often, however, prediction is not the key thing. Rather, what matters is our ability to respond to the other person. Our ability to find our feet with her. The other person smiles or says something, and we know what she means. Her gesture makes sense to us, and that we have indeed understood her in something she herself may confirm. The other person smiles or says something, and we know what she means. Her gesture makes sense to us, and that we have indeed understood her is something she herself may confirm. Goes to show how utterly important understanding is, which is often neglected. Similarly, what matters with music is our relation to it, the particular way in which we respond to it. continue. Sorry for the break. Similarly, what matters with music is our relation to it, the particular way in which we respond to it. Somehow an array of sounds can seem to express our deepest feelings about life and the world we live in. And a brief musical phrase can capture the very essence of a feeling or experience. I think about Ravel, Bolero here, Satie, it's very strong. Somehow an array of sounds can seem to express our deepest feelings about life and the world we live in. And a brief musical phrase can capture the very essence of a feeling or experience. What justifies the notion of understanding is a complexity, our response, and the fact that while it is spontaneous, it is also often shared. Furthermore, even if we cannot explain the significance of the music, we can still give some indication of what it means to us. I say to myself, what is this? What does this phrase say? Just what does it express? I still feel that there must be a much clearer experience, understanding of it than the one I have. And this understanding would be reached by saying a great deal about the surrounding of the phrase. As if one were trying to understand an expressive gesture in a ceremony. Very good example, actually. In order to explain it, I should need, as it were, to analyze the ceremony. And in order to explain it, I should need, as it were, to analyze the ceremony, which is very good. E.g., to alter it and show what influence that would have on the role of the gesture. I might also say, I feel as if there must be parallels to this musical expression in other fields. The question is really, are these notes not the expression for what is expressed here? Presumably. But that does not mean that they aren't to be explained by working on their surroundings. The phrase says something, but something which cannot be paraphrased. It says itself. it makes a unique gesture, but the significance of that gesture can be explored by relating it to the network of possibilities against which it has its meaning. According to Wittgenstein, therefore, we do understand music, but not because it contains a message which could just as easily have been put into words. On the contrary, we understand music as we understand gestures, and the nature of the understanding is different from that involved in understanding is different from the involved in understanding a pre-arranged signal. And that is a huge difference. Here, learning the language does not consist in learning definitions, but in coming to respond directly to the gestures which constitute the language. Furthermore, it may be impossible to state explicitly what the gesture or the musical phrase means. When a theme, a phrase suddenly means something to you, you do not have to be able to explain it to yourself. Suddenly, this gesture too is accessible to you. This does not mean, however, that all explanation of what the theme means is impossible. We may be able to say roughly why we find it so moving, and it may even be possible to find a gesture in another medium which corresponds to it. However, what is at stake is not the substitution of one general sign for another. Rather, it involves finding a link between two incommensurate realms, both of which get their importance from their relation to human life and feeling. The peculiar feeling that the recurrence of a refrain gives us. I should like to make a gesture. But the gesture isn't really at all characteristic precisely of the recurrence of a refrain. Perhaps I might find that a phrase characterizes the situation better, but it too would fail to explain why the refrain strikes one as a joke, why its recurrence elicits a laugh or a grin from me. If I could dance to the music, that would be the best way of expressing just how the refrain moves me. The piece of music says something, but not because it contains some form of encoded message. Rather, it speaks a language of its own, and one which cannot be taught by rules. But which presupposes that the individual responds directly to what she hears and so finds meaning in an apparently arbitrary pattern of resemblances and differences. And now it gets even more interesting. The example of music shows how there can be communication and understanding without a pre-arranged symbolism. Music says something to us even though it is not based on a system of agreed meanings. The natural inclination is to contrast this language with the language of words, where clear rules and definitions exist. The existence of poetry, however, already calls this dichotomy into question. For as Wittgenstein notes, a poem, even though it is composed in a language of information, is not used in the language game of information. In fact, a poem can make the same sort of impression upon us as a piece of music. For here too we are inclined to say that the reading or listening to it involves special experiences. I experience something different, a quote. And what kind of thing? I can give no satisfactory answer. For what I could mention is not what is most important. But didn't you enjoy it during the reading? Of course, for the opposite answer would mean I enjoyed it later or earlier, and I don't want to say that. Good conclusion. But now, you surely do remember sensations and images as you read. They are such as to comment up with the enjoyment, with the impressions. But they got their significance only from the surroundings, through the reading of this poem, from my familiarity with its language, with its meter, and with innumerable associations. I think that's important too, that they are innumerable. Excuse me for a second. So as we've been so clearly being explained by Ludwig Wittgenstein, now come to an understanding that a lot of direct talk, including gestures and movements, the whole body, is much dependent how well you know the person. And that there doesn't have to be pre-made rules for understanding to be possible. We are able to take notice of them, as Wittgenstein writes. As in music, meter, rhythm contribute to the gesture the poet makes. As does particular choice of words, for replacing a word in poetry with a synonym may undermine the poem's force and alter its significance. And I think this is very important. The aspect blind wouldn't see it as that, and neither would the modern day autistic or the left hemisphere dominated person. The example of poetry underlines the musical element in language. But the element is not restricted to poetry. Indeed, if the poet's words can pierce us, this is only possible because of the particular relation to language we have, because we are at home in language. I think that's an important point. This is our substance. It's so close to us we even forget it. The words of our language strike us as expressive in their own right, pictures, as it were, of their meaning, and from each a host of paths leads off in every direction, so that our thoughts roam up and down in the familiar surroundings of the words. It is important to recognize, however, that this is not the only relation to language that is conceivable. There could also be a language in whose use the impression made on us by the signs played no part, in which there was no such thing as understanding in the sense of such an impression. The signs are, e.g., written, transmitted to us, and we are able to take notice of them. That is to say, the only impression that comes in here is the pattern of the sign. If the sign is an order, we translate it into action by means of rules, tables. It does not get as far as an impression, like that of a picture, nor are stories written in this language. That is pointing to a very interesting aspect. So very interestingly, he goes further and further into the confusion that we share in language, and that makes us incapable of understanding what we are doing. Asking the wrong question is just the surface symptoms of this. It goes much deeper. It's a foundation of misunderstanding that is even before language. Most interesting. I say thank you very much for your patience and have a very pleasant day.